a somber morning. I hope everybody was aware of what happened over the weekend regarding the July 4th flooding in Texas. I'd like to go over that as the first story of the morning. A lot has happened over the weekend. A lot of brave men and women have gone in trying to save people and find people that have been lost and swept up in the floods. Over 800 people have been saved. Many more are still missing. Right now, as of last night, the death count was up to 78, including 28 children. The death count now is up to 82 are now dead, with about 37 are missing. 10 of those missing are children. For those that are unaware, there was a flooding in the Guadalupe River. Specifically, there was a camp called Camp Mystic. It was a Christian girls' camp that catered, of course, to Christian girls and basically helped them grow with the Lord. That camp was right on the bank of the Guadalupe River. The cabins for the youngest girls happened to be near the river. The river rose over 26 feet in about an hour, around 4 a.m. on July 4th. With that, we'll go into the story, share what we know, and pray for those who are still missing. As of yesterday, July 6th, 41 people are unaccounted for. That is now down to, I believe, 37. When this story was published, 78 people were dead. That is now up to 82. 68 of those deaths were in Kerr County. 10 were elsewhere in Texas. Of course, that number is continuing to increase. Local, state, and federal authorities have deployed more than 400 first responders to Central Texas. I'm very thankful they're not getting the response that happened in Appalachia. It is fantastic to see federal government and local government really cooperating and working to save people instead of wringing their hands. President Donald Trump signed a major disaster declaration for Kerr County on the morning of July 6th, said his administration is working with state and local officials to recovery efforts. Trump has also stated he would be visiting the affected area shortly. So what exactly happened? 45 minutes before daybreak on July 4th, the Guadalupe River rose 26 feet or more as destructive, fast-moving flash floodwaters washed out homes, vehicles. The chaos continued on July 5th as torrential downpours poured communities outside San Antonio while flash flood warnings and watches remained in effect. Rescuers looked for victims stranded in trees in camps cut off by destroyed roads using drones, boats, and helicopters. Here's the Guadalupe River. This is Camp Mystic, the dining hall, rec room, office, and cabins. This is where the majority of the damage occurred, as far as there were over 800 people here. I believe around 750 children, all girls, who were affected by this flood, where these floodwaters came through and washed out this camp with the children present. Camp Mystic is here. Here's Caryville. Of course, the county is the surrounding area. It is, of course, northwest from San Antonio. Just giving you some reference. AccuWeather warned residents of imminent flash flooding 30 minutes before the National Weather Service's flash flood warning, which provided even more advance notice. He said that Texas Hill Country, which includes Kerr County, is one of the most flash flood prone parts of the country due to its terrain and low water crossings. Organizers near Camp Rio and Camp Sierra had said on social media that they were following the weather alerts the day before, finishing the second summer session on July 3rd. Both elected officials and local authorities have said that they were surprised by the intense downpour, which was equal to a month's worth of rain for the area. Called it a once-in-a-century flood and said people would second-guess and finger-point while looking for someone to blame for the tragedy. This is Representative Chip Roy, whose district includes this area. Something to note, giving a warning 30 minutes before something's going to happen, or 30 minutes before the National Weather Service, everybody's asleep. It could be 3 hours before it was going to happen. Everybody's asleep. 4 in the morning, nobody's checking. Nobody's looking at it. I guarantee you the kids and the parents, the chaperones that were there, weren't looking at their phones. They were focused on God. And the sad thing is that nobody knew that the floods were going to be this disastrous and this awful. 26 feet in less than an hour is insanely crazy. Speaking of some of the children lost, Blair and Brook Harbor clung to each other as they were swept away by ravaging floods in Kern County early Friday. Rescuers discovered the bodies of the 11 and 13-year-old sisters from Dallas with rosaries in their hands locked together. It's disgusting as leftoids and horrible people without souls who are making fun of these people. Soulless degenerates. More than 850 people have been rescued in the past 36 hours, and there were heroic attempts at camps to save children. The Trump administration will use all available resources, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said after arriving in the area. Both Coast Guard helicopters and planes have been deployed to assist so that rescue operations could continue into the night. While the weekend forecast had called for rain and was eventually upgraded from a flash flood watch to warning overnight on July 4th for at least 30,000 people in the area, locals said they were caught off guard. Again, there were probably warnings, but nothing that called for what was actually happening. Again, the flash flood was upgraded overnight. Knowing those campers and how those camps generally operate, they probably put up the phones. They did not understand what kind of disaster they were going to befall them. There are some shining brightness through this. A brand new Coast Guard graduate was one of the pivotal people who helped save a lot of victims. Him and his crew that he was orchestrating saved over 165 people out of the flood. A Coast Guard rescue swimmer is already being hailed as an American hero after his very first mission to help save the lives of 165 Texas flash flood victims. The majority of these victims were from the camp. From Ruskan. This is why we take those risks all the time. This is why I like the Coast Guard men and women who are risking their lives every day, said Petty Officer Ruskan, who was in charge of triage at Camp Mystic, the Christian summer camp that saw some of the worst of the flooding. When the crew arrived, they were racing against sundown to rescue as many stranded flood victims as possible. All roads were impassable and the currents were too strong for any boat to get in, leaving helicopter evacuation as the only hope for the nearly 200 survivors. As the crews evaluated the operational logistics, their goal was to move as many people out of harm's way as possible, but they were bound by the weight limits of the helicopters. During a briefing, they decided to leave Ruskin on the ground to triage the rescue mission. I was like, sweet, sounds great. I'll be more helpful on the ground than I will be in the air. So that's kind of what we went with. Here are images of what they were up against. As you can see, it's pretty much completely flooded out. He would be down here in the area helping on the ground to orchestrate the victims, gather them together, and direct rescue personnel from the helicopters on gathering them up and gathering the best place to get them out. So he'll probably be waiting in here with a kayak or some sort of flotation device, gathering people and moving to an area that could be staged to get the helicopter rescue to gather them and get them out. The rescuers loaded the first 4 to 5 survivors in the MH-65, and Ruskin set out to take a closer look at the scene of the camp, which was on higher ground than the flood-ravaged surrounding areas where trees were snapped like twigs and twisted metal of cars littered the muddy ground. While on the ground, Ruskin tended to terrified injured campers, many of them shoeless and still wearing pajamas from their mad dash out of their bunks in the middle of the night. In between comforting the cold, wet, and miserable survivors, both kids and adults, Ruskin directed Army Black Hawk 60s and MH-65s to pockets of survivors to begin painstakingly bringing them to safety. He said one of the hardest parts was having crying grown adults coming to him for help finding missing loved ones. Over the next several hours, Ruskin spearheaded a high-risk rescue mission under the worst possible environmental conditions, which in the end saw 165 brought to safety. So we basically got the majority of the people out of Camp Mystic, which is awesome, and I feel like we did a lot of good that day, but obviously it's still super sad. There's still a lot of people missing and unaccounted for, so the mission's not over yet. It's not over for us. Him and his crew are still out there. As of today, rescue operations are still ongoing up they find more. And I pray for those families. I'll be out.